أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى عترة الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعلى. Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome to Real Talk. Nice to have you all here again. Today we have Nishaat Bhimani with us. Assalamu alaikum Nishaat. Nishaat is here to share her story. In fact, I'm going to let her tell you her story. Do you want to just introduce yourself first? Just tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Sure. Assalamu alaikum. For having me. I'm thinking that my story is worthy of being on here. I am Nishaat. I am a mother of Khadija Bhimani, and I am a maths teacher and a numeracy coordinator. My story is to do with my daughter who has Down syndrome.
Okay. For those people who, which is very unusual, would not know what Down syndrome is, do you just want to just tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So Down syndrome is a condition that happens at the time of conception. It is when, so our cells have chromosomes, and we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. Down syndrome happens, it's a definite marker that you have Down syndrome when the 21st copy of the chromosome has an extra copy. So people with Down syndrome usually, instead of having 46 chromosomes, have 47 chromosomes.
And what does that mean in reality, in practical terms?
Okay, so Down syndrome is it's a condition, like I said. It is diagnosed by certain markers, and these markers can be physical, external, or internal. There is a list of things that marks when you to diagnose somebody with Down syndrome. So the chromosome is the definite marker, and then you have other things like they have a shorter neck, or they have Mongolian eyes, or they're shorter and they have a protruding tongue. The more intense health problems that come with Down syndrome are things like you can have children with who are born with Down syndrome are usually either have a gut problem or a heart problem. That is the more severe health conditions they can have. But then they also have lifelong learning disability, and depending, it's really a range of abilities. You cannot say all children with Down syndrome have the same sort of abilities. There's a range of abilities that children with Down syndrome can have, also depending on their intense, or if they have been diagnosed with other more severe health problems.
Okay, so you mentioned that you have a daughter called Khadija who has Down syndrome. Do you have any other children?
No, I decided after we had Khadija that we wanted to, I think we were, because she was our first, and my husband and I are first cousins as well, we thought it was best that we just gave our attention and time and energy to Khadija. And I think we made the right decision. My mom thinks that it's not the right decision. I can't hear you, Mas Mandi. Sorry.
I said, I'm sure as a grandparent, I'd love to have my grandchildren around, so I'm sure she would love to have lots and lots more.
Mom, it's not down to you. I have people at mosque even, you know, they see Khadija and they see me, and I only know them from being at mosque, and they're like, oh, when are you having another baby? That's it.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you a little bit more, if that's okay. So did you know that Khadija was going to be a Down child when you were pregnant with her?
No. So Khadija's diagnosis came postnatal.
Okay. So up to the delivery, you thought everything was normal, no problems, nothing.
That I didn't really recognize at the time of my pregnancy, but thinking after I had Khadija in hindsight. So for example, things like first of all, we decided not to have the screenings for any issues that there might have been. My sister and I remember went in for an appointment, and I was asked if I wanted to, and my sister looked at me, but we had already discussed this, and we said we weren't going to abort even if we were to find out. And I think most parents make that decision. And we thought, why have a pregnancy where, we have to deal with all this stress? If there was something, might as well enjoy the pregnancy, and then we'll see if there is anything. Not that we were thinking there was anything. And then, all those prenatal appointments that you go to, and I went to my GP for I don't remember how often they're done but for the heart rate, you go in to listen to the child's heart rate and stuff. So up to then, I never thought. I remember going to one of those prenatal meetings with all the other mothers, and where the midwife there says, "Oh, your baby should move, or kick or certain number of times." And I'm thinking, my baby doesn't. So I got really worried, and I went up to her at the end of the session, and I said, "My baby, you said this is how many times, and it's hardly 1 or 2 times a day, if that." And she's like, "Oh, you must have a really lazy baby." And I didn't think of anything. I said, "Well, her mom's lazy, or the baby's mom's lazy, maybe the baby's lazy as well." So I didn't make anything of it at the time of my pregnancy. The heartbeats, when we went for the scans, again, the doctor was, I remember the look, but I didn't at the time, because it was my first and I didn't know any better. I remember the doctor getting kind of worried, saying, "Oh, it's unusually faster than what it would have safe to be," but they didn't make a big deal of it. And I'm thinking maybe they didn't because I refused to have any tests done, because I wanted a peaceful pregnancy.
So you'd just been through delivery. They gave you the child in your arms, in your husband's arms. How did it play out?
Right. So we went in during the delivery. Khadija was bang on time. We went in, and they were treating me really, really well. And I'm thinking, oh, this is, NHS is really good. I had people coming to look off, check on me every half an hour. I was there only for a few, I think about 8 hours I was there only. And I had every half an hour people will come, "Are you all right? Are you all right? Do you need anything?" And I'm thinking, wow. And then the time for delivery came, and I was fine, usual. And I went in, and it's a big, massive delivery room. And I'm thinking, oh, I didn't know this is how big they usually are. And there was.
So do you think the doctors knew something, or?
Yeah, they did, because there were more people than needed in that room. There was about 5 professionals in that room, and I'm thinking, and again, because I didn't know any better, my sister because my sister had her son before me, so my sister already is thinking something's not right, because she came during the delivery as well, as my mom. But my mom came in, and there wasn't anything that I knew of that I should. But in hindsight, now I can tell, there were more people than there was necessary and usual. And there was a consultant there was a midwife there were God knows what professionals there were. But I remember 5 extra people in that room.
Okay, so once Khadija was born, they handed the baby to you?
Yeah, so Khadija was born.
And did you notice anything then?
No, not at all. They handed the baby to me, and I was awake, and they gave it to me, and I'm like, I'm not bonding with this child, and I was like, please get her off me so I can just get. That's one of the pictures after delivery. She was all hooked up to all those cables. There was not a single part of her body that was not propped with cables from everywhere. And I'll talk more about her nasal feed as well.
So this was afterwards, obviously. So initially, she was just handed to you, just like.
Yeah, she was crying so much. She was very passive, and that was a little bit worrying that she wasn't making a lot of noise. They handed her to me, and I was like, okay, I've had enough now. Just take her, and let me just freshen up, and then I'll do all the motherly things that I have to. So there was no bond at the time. So they took Khadija away, and my sister was there. And after they'd cleaned her up, they gave my sister Khadija, and my sister immediately, because she had a baby before, knew the signs and everything. But she wouldn't say anything. She phoned my husband, and my husband was already on his way because he was at work. Yeah, and it was my father-in-law, marhum, had come to visit us before we had a baby, and he said, oh, if there is ever a girl that's born in this house, her name will be Khadija, because his mom's name was Khadija. And I was like, no, I don't want to name my daughter Khadija. What kind of name is that? That's so old-fashioned. And my who is my masi as well, she just looked at me, she's like, shan't message her, it's okay, you don't have to listen, but just let him talk. I'm like, okay. And then when Khadija was born, Samira, my sister, just phones my husband and said, oh, Khadija's here. And they all started addressing her as Khadija. And I'm like, okay.
So you really had no choice.
And then I remember the midwife once asked me, what have you named her? And I was like, Khadija. And she's like, oh, that's a big name for such a small soul. I'm like, yes, it is. Yes. Khadija to my sister, and my husband came over, and we're enjoying this being new parents, and but my husband also afterwards told me that he thought Khadija's chest was quite protruding. It wasn't a very normal looking chest. But at the time he didn't. He questions a lot, so he's like, "Abadu barabar che, is this how?" And I didn't think anything of it. So I think, yeah, and they kept taking Khadija away. They kept taking Khadija away from me, like they kept her in the neonatal unit. And then in the evening, I remember one of the doctors came, and she's like, we're just making sure everything's okay. And even then, she's not telling me what the problem or anything is. I stayed in the hospital overnight. Was one of the most uncomfortable days. Khadija was not with me. She was they hadn't left Khadija with me. So again, because I was new to all this, I'm thinking this is all just normal. This is how it's all done. And then the next day, a consultant comes to see me, and my mom and my sister are already there with me. And she says that I need to speak to you and your husband, and could you get your husband here? I'm like, okay, is everything okay? And she's like, no, we'll talk when your husband arrives. So I call my husband, and my husband's like, just tell them to say whatever it is that they want to with you. I'll be there shortly, but don't wait on me, just get on with it. I said, okay. So the consultant came in, and I said to her, my husband's on his way, and he said we can get on with a conversation. And that's when she broke it down to us. And she said that your baby, we think, has Down syndrome. We will be doing some tests to confirm, but I'm telling you that that's what it is.
What was your initial reaction?
Immediately, I had so many questions, so many questions pop up in my head. Is she going to be able to read and write? Is she going to be able to walk? Is she going to be able to get married? And all of the thoughts. And I verbalize these questions, and my consultant's like, you got to slow down. You're thinking too far away. You got to concentrate on this child that needs you just now, and you got to be there for her in the present. And she was very, very compassionate. The way they spoke, and that meeting that happened, I don't know if it was somebody else, how well it would have gone. Anyway, so she told us, my mom and my sister were there again. Moody was on his way. But the time before Moody got to the room, and me, my sister, and my mom, I remember me on the bed, my mom on my right side, and my sister opposite me. And we're just looking at each other. And then we all just started crying. Duske, we're like all just crying. We're not telling anything to each other. We're not consoling each other. We're not saying, oh, it's going to be fine. And we're just crying. But then we had that moment, and then my husband came, and I suppose he had to be the strong one. So he's like, yeah, no, we need to get on with things, and we need to find out what to do. And he was more the practical one, let's find out what we have to do. Let's sort this out. And I was more the emotional one. I have a baby with Down, and I'm going to have to deal with this. And I remember.
Can I ask, at what point did you turn to God, or did you ask, and what did you ask him? At what point did God come into the picture?
So I'm guilty to say this, but and embarrassed a little bit. At this point, I'm still not thinking anything to do with God. I'm just thinking about this baby I have,
I don't think there's anything to be embarrassed about. I think, you know, you've been given this enormous news. Obviously, you're trying to digest it. I'm just wondering, and there's no right or wrong answer as such. I'm just wondering, was there a specific point that you remember where you actually sort of turned to God, and what was your conversation with him, if there was a conversation, or was it just du'as, or did you just pray? How, I'm just wondering where that came in, if
I
at all,
remember
when?
one day at mosque. So up to the time of Khadija's diagnosis, it was such a I can't even explain. It was such a roller coaster of emotions and questions at the time that I was not, you know, it was, okay, why me, or Allah, you know, what, and what am I going to do with it? At this time, I'm not thinking anything. I'm just thinking how I'm going to get my life with this. And I remember the consultant, and I was very much reliant on the information and the service that I was getting from the NHS, from the consultants, from the midwives. And Khadija wasn't with me at the time. So, you know, I didn't have any, it wasn't very real to me because I wasn't looking at a baby with those features in my hand at the time. They had taken Khadija away. I hardly had Khadija. I remember I didn't even go to feed her until the next day. And when the consultant had already told me what was going on. And I remember the advice the consultant gave me. She's like, because she saw how emotional I was, how many questions I was getting, and how I just wanted to get on with it. She said to me, Nishaat, if I could give you an advice, it would be that you don't stop working. Continue to work, because I was working before I had Khadija. She's like, continue working. You'll be able to do both at the same time. And she saw how supportive my family, my husband, my mom, and my sister at the time were. She's like, you've got, you know, such a good set of people around you. Don't stop working. But I had to take time off with Khadija, after Khadija. Anyway, so this was the second day, and they took me up to see Khadija. Again, I'm not bonding with this girl because she's put in this incubator. And
so this is when she's all hooked up and everything, or was that afterwards?
No, this was the second day. She wasn't yet. I think Khadija developed jaundice, which is when they started hooking her up, and also they had to do. When they told me about about Down syndrome and how, you know, it's not inherited, but we'll have to do some tests. They also tested my husband and I to make sure that we didn't have Down syndrome. Although, so the reason why I'm trying to tell you this is because there are no definite markers of people with Down syndrome. I know there are those physical looks that they have, but the confirmed marker is the chromosomes, and you can only from the tests when you do them. So both my husband and I were tested, and yeah, Khadija was not like, I wasn't bonding with Khadija at the time at all.
Is there a reason you weren't bonding with her? Is it you were just overtired from the delivery, or was it? I mean, because you weren't bonding with her before you knew that she was Down syndrome, so it wasn't the news of the Down syndrome.
I haven't analyzed that bit. I just feel that now. I just feel that maybe it was the whole experience for me, and also because I have so many people around me that will look after me and her, you know, and I knew it was going to eventually happen, you know, but I think maybe I was just taking my time. Yeah, so Khadija, they asked me to go feed her, and I couldn't, because Khadija, one of the things that people with Down syndrome have is a very poor muscle tone. So Khadija's jaws were not as developed as they should have been at the time. So she wouldn't feed, and they decided to put her on a tube. And
can I just ask you how, because I think this is relevant for a lot of mothers go through this, where their children are not able to feed for whatever reason, whether it's that, you know, it may be something to do with the mother or the child. How did that make you feel that you couldn't feed your own child?
It was a very sad. Decided with as a mother that I wanted to do all that for my baby. And I had taken time out. I was at home. So it was what I wanted to do. But it didn't happen because Khadija, one, could not feed. And secondly, I think from the stress of it all and everything, I couldn't either.
So how did you move past that? How did you get your head around that?
There was so much more to look after Khadija, because she was in this incubator. She was all plugged in. They said the more contact you have with your child, the better. So it was just constantly being around her, making sure that she's fine and everything. So I
suppose it's like looking at the bigger picture rather than all the small things.
So there was too much distractions for me to even think about it all, you know. I tried to do everything right. I tried to eat healthily. I tried to drink enough water. But then, you know, there comes a time when you think, okay, it's not meant to be. You just have to do what's best for the child. And also they wanted Khadija to grow. And if I couldn't give her and she wasn't taking it, then the best way to forward was to make sure that she was being fed properly.
Can I just pick up on the statement that you made? It wasn't meant to be. I love that statement. What did you mean by that?
I said, because we had done everything possible within our means to make sure that Khadija was able to feed. We tried, knowing that she had the nasal tube, and despite that, I try and feed her. Like I said, I was eating healthily, making sure that I was producing enough milk. And then I thought, I'm doing everything right. Milk is trying as well. And because she had a heart condition, which is another part of the whole Down syndrome thing I'll come to, she was getting very breathless. And it was being very unfair to try so much and getting her tired trying to feed.
So it wasn't meant to be means that someone else was deciding what was meant to be?
Absolutely. And that's
so then God did come into the picture, although you didn't maybe realize, you know, it probably wasn't something, you know, you consciously thought about, but obviously in the subconscious it's constantly there. Yeah. It's just because you said you felt bad and guilty about it, and I'm thinking, well, what have you got to feel bad and guilty about? Because obviously he was there in your subconscious without you even realizing it.
And there were, you know, the midwives there, they were looking after Khadija in the neonatal unit, were constantly telling me, you know, there's mothers that don't want to do this, you know, why are you forcing it? I'm like, no, but I want to. And that's when I realized, you know, I'm being given this advice. There are people around me guiding me. Khadija was trying to the point where she was getting really, really tired. I was trying, and yet, you know, it didn't happen. So, you know, at certain points in life when you've tried your best and you've given it your all and it still doesn't happen, then, you know, maybe Allah has different plans.
For sure. And like he says, you know, we plan and he plans and he's the best of planners. And I think we have to keep reminding ourselves that for sure. So, okay, do you want, and then when did you leave the hospital and how did that happen? And how did you feel going home?
Oh my God. So I didn't leave the hospital. I was in the hospital for about 3 or 4 days after Khadija. Again, just making sure that Khadija is in safe hands, I think. And then after 3 or 4 days, before that, the 3 or 4 days that I was in the hospital, now we had to, you know, break the news to everyone, you know, the family and everyone. And alhamdulillah, you know, at the time I didn't think of it, but Allah has blessed me with such beautiful people around me, alhamdulillah. I remember my Chacha had called me from America, and he said, I wasn't complaining or anything. And he said, Nishaat, you know what? Oh, they don't call me Nishaat, they call me, you know what? I'm like, what do you want to say, Chacha? And he said, God had decided that he wanted this child on earth. And you're so lucky that he chose you to be responsible for this child. And that meant so much to me. And from that day on, not that I did before, but from that day on, I never complained. I said, this is a blessing, you know, Allah has chosen me to look after this child. I mean, what a big responsibility this is.
That is beautiful, and then it just shows how powerful words can be.
Yeah.
You know, they can actually give you that motivation to sort of be something amazing just by some words, or they can really break someone as well. And I think that's a huge learning, you know, for people to realize that before they say something, maybe just take a step back and think about what you're saying, because those words can have a huge impact on people. And like your chacha had a huge impact with just those small words, you know, it made a whole difference to you, the way you were going to parent Khadija now, and the way you looked at her.
Yeah. Noticed that. And then I had my cousin, he came to, like, because after you get your baby, people visit, right? And because they can't go home, because none of us are at home, they come and visit you in the hospital. And I had so many visitors, and one of my cousins came to see me, and he came again the next day, and I'm like, oh, you're here again? He's like, yeah. And he brought me balloons and flowers, and he said, you know what, your room looked very dull to me, so I said we should cheer it up with some balloons.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Alhamdulillah, oh my God. And then I had family who then, because my mom was looking after me at the time. I don't know who looked after my husband. I felt really bad for him because he was having to deal with it by himself. My mommy was looking after me, so she was being strong and there for me and making sure I was eating the right foods and everything. And there wasn't anybody to look after all these people who were looking after me. Like, my mom was equally affected, you know. She had her grandchild, a second grandchild, and who's got this. And my mommy, alhamdulillah, that's another story. My mom lost her husband. My dad was only about 37 years old, 36, I think. She lost her son a few years after that. She lost brothers and her nieces, and God knows how many people she's lost in her life. But alhamdulillah, I think the strength that I get is from my mom. I mean, she never once says, oh, why me? Or says, Ajay, you know what, that she doesn't have that iman. She keeps her faith instead has increased, you know.
Maybe I need to ask her to come on Real Talk. I think there's a lot we can learn from her.
I think you should.
Inshallah. I will get her phone number from you and contact her, inshallah. No, that's amazing. Sorry, you mentioned your dad passed away when he was 36. So how old were you when he passed away?
I was 11.
Sorry, say that again. How old were you?
11 years old, and I was the oldest of 3 children. My sister was about 2 years younger than me, and I had a baby brother who was 4.
Wow. So you actually sort of had to step up and help your mom parent.
At the age of 11, I don't think I did. Our family, my Masi, who was my sasu, came and lived with us for 3 months after my dad passed away. She left her family and came and lived with us for 3 months. She gave my mom all the support that she needed. My mamas and my mommies. When my brother passed away, my mom was in Dar es Salaam, I remember, and she was at my mommy's house. My mommy, and it was Ramadan, and my mommy for 3 days, you know, all the people that come and say, you know, their condolences, she looked after them. So we're alhamdulillah, we're really blessed with the best of people around.
Sorry, can I just ask, how old were you when your brother passed away?
So that was when I was born, 21.
Wow. That must have been a huge impact on you.
Yeah, my brother didn't get to see Khadija. Khadija was born in April and he passed away in December. We were planning a trip in December to go visit him, and it wasn't meant to be.
So you had Khadija, you were getting used to her. It had only been, what, 6 months? 6 months? And your brother passes away. Your emotions must have been all over the place.
See, at the time when we went there, I was more worried for my mom, because for her, she had now no one. She had her 2 daughters married. She had this son that, who had her his whole life. And the way it happened as well, it was a car accident. Both my dad and my brother passed away in a car accident. My dad passed away on the day of Eid of Qadir, and my brother passed away on the eve of 27th Ramadan. So Allah, he's giving us things, but he's also blessing us with the other things in return. So nobody really can forget those days.
With difficulty, there is ease. Right? He's trying to show you the ease that's there, if you can see it in that way, in that light, and it's beautiful that you can. Again, were there any conversations with God that was happening? Was there any sort of why me, any sort of anything there that was there, or were you just content with God's plan?
I think I had seen my mom so strong in her faith. It never occurred to me to question why me. I mean, later in Khadija's life, when things were happening, there were sad moments, but there were never moments where I thought to Allah, Sutia, why me? Or the why me that comes even today is, why have you chosen to bless me with this? Masmati, there's so many things that have come with Khadija that I would not have had without her, and trust me, it's nothing but a blessing.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing that you can actually see the positives, because in life, in every situation, no matter how difficult that situation is, there is always positives that we can see, the blessings that's there. Even if it is just mere growth within ourselves, there is huge amounts of blessings. And I think when we can focus on that, it gives us the strength and the sabr that is required in order to sort of move through that life situation. So it's amazing that you were able to do that, and we need to actually say, well done to your mom for bringing up you in the way that you're able to do that. And maybe the strength that you had from losing your dad at such a young age, and then having Khadija and everything, all of these things actually build you and make you stronger. So you're able to cope with other things.
Absolutely. You talk about patience, and I remember, you asking me about conversations I've had with Allah during my time with Khadija. And I remember I felt growing up, I was a very impatient person. Even during my adolescence, my marriage, when I got married, I thought I was a very impatient person, that I wanted everything kun fayakun, I remember when Khadija was born, one of the conversations I had with Allah is like, because I used to ask to Allah, I said, I don't want to be so impatient. I want to be a very patient person. I want this change to happen in me. And then when Khadija came, I was like, Allah, you gave me this. You knew this is my answer. My prayers answered. I asked for patience and you gave it to me, So yeah.
One of the conversations I was having with someone is that they're scared to ask for growth, because obviously growth comes from difficulty and they don't want difficulty in their lives. How would you answer that?
I don't see Khadija as a difficulty. If anything, I think Khadija is a blessing all round. From the time she was born to date, I don't see it as a test. I mean, I have family and friends who come over and who talk to Khadija and who ask her, Khadija, when you go to Jannah, will you please take us with you? I mean, I have that privilege.
No, sorry, I didn't mean Khadija being a difficulty. I meant the difficulty of learning sabr, obviously, because now you're being put in a situation where your patience is being tested, and that's the only way you're going to get patience. So,
I mean, those tests are every step of our life. We went to. There's so much that I want to talk about Khadija's life, and its testing moments at each time, and those moments only bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you're thinking you need him, because you want whatever is happening to go smoothly. You're thinking he's chosen me for this test, which means he wants me closer to him, and you're thinking you're getting so many blessings in return, so those tests, definitely they're there. They're like, there's every step of Khadija's milestones and achievements have given me a very testing time as a mother. But alhamdulillah, I find them more when we've overcome those times. They're in hindsight, they're seen as blessings.
Was there ever a time where you thought, I can't do this? I'm not strong enough to do this. I don't know why God picked me. It's like he's got it wrong, or anything like that at all that went through your mind?
Never. It's not an option. It's not an option. If I don't, who will?
Wow, that's beautiful. And it actually shows, it's testament to the way that you've actually behaved. You've not just sort of accepted Khadija and said, okay, you know what, I've got Khadija, I've just got to get on with it. You've actually, I think, set up so many different things, and to sort of that awareness in the community, the way that you've integrated Khadija within the community, and blessed us all with knowing Khadija. Because again, I think, if you'd sort of taken a step back and maybe sort of being one of these parents who were like, okay, I have to do this, let me just do it, but you sort of embraced it, and you really ran with it. And I know, as a community member, I am really grateful to have Khadija in my life. I think she's amazing. She gives the most beautiful hugs, and the smile that she gives you every time she says salam, it's amazing. What drove you to do that, and what was your thinking at each stage when you were trying to, because obviously you're trying to set up things which will make it easier for Khadija, and in the meantime you're educating all of us. But I'm just wondering, what was your drive, and how did it come about?
Before I answer that question, Masmanti, there was more about Khadija's health that I want to talk about. If you don't mind.
Go ahead. No, not at all. Go ahead.
So I came home after 4 days after the delivery, and you're coming home without a baby, and you've got family waiting, and we had to tell family. I remember telling my sasu, or explaining to her what Down syndrome was, because obviously back in Tanzania the awareness is not so much there, and I don't remember when I left Dar es Salaam that there were people there with Down syndrome, or any sort of genetic disorder. So when I told my sasu, or my mom said to my sasu, that a chokri chain and a Down syndrome chain, this is what it is. My sasu said, and so to explain what Down syndrome was, we said, well, she'll be able to do everything, but it'll just be slower. The milestones will be much slower then. So my sasu, I remember saying, she said to my mom, "Hapani doctor bani shakse, khali jak later, doctor." So things like that, the family, I've got the best of them. So I come home without a baby, and I had high blood pressure as well. So I think the stress of it and having high blood pressure did not help. So immediately I was rushed back to the hospital. And I stayed there for another 5 days, and I was looked after. I mean, the health professionals there in Northwick Park Hospital, and I don't have enough praises for them. Khadija stayed in the hospital for 99 days. They usually celebrate children's birthdays, the 100th birthday, if they stay there. Khadija did not get to celebrate the 100th birthday. She was home on the night. I was like, you stayed, might as well have stayed one more day. But yeah, the hospital rounds and the hospital trips, name an infection that could happen, and she was getting it, and we were going to see Khadija at random hours of the day because we were missing having to bring a child back with us. I remember my husband, I was looked after. My husband had to deal with things very much by himself. And I remember he used to go to see Khadija at like 10 o'clock at night, or like 2 o'clock in the morning, and alhamdulillah, we overcame that. But that things weren't to stop there. Khadija was born with a hole right in the center of the heart. I'm not going to use very medical terms, but it's called an AVSD, where the hole is right in the middle of the heart, which affects all 4 chambers of the heart, which mixes all the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. So they said that Khadija will need to, and this is very common with children with Down syndrome. They have a heart defect or a gut defect. she had to be prepped up for a surgery. Usually in kids, they don't do it before 6 months, but because it would have affected her lungs more, and she wouldn't have been able to cope with her diagnosis, they wanted to do the operation when she was about 3 months old. So we came home, she was nasal fed. I got supplements to fatten her up because her heart was like the size of a strawberry, and they had to operate on that, and she was nasal fed. And I remember when my brother passed away and we went to Tanzania, my Sass is a very strong lady, you know, she helped my mom overcome all of this, and I remember putting the nasal tube in, because they train you to do this when you're taking your child home, and we had family living with us, so I didn't want them disturbed, so I used to stay awake at ungodly hours and, you know, feeding Khadija. And I remember putting that nasal, by this time now Khadija is about 6 months, and I remember putting the nasal feed down through her nose, and my Sasu just could not look, and I'm like, Joe Mutamarti stronger too. Yeah, and then the heart operation itself, you know, we went there on the day, and we were asked to go back because they didn't have enough beds, and my husband's like, we're not going through all of this again, you are taking us in today. A lot of the parents that had come for the operation had to go back, and my husband, I think, bless him, thank God he made that decision. We stayed, and they took us around to see what it entails, and they showed us other kids who were coming post surgery, and it was a very, very tough time during Khadija's heart to see your child go through that. But alhamdulillah, my family, and you know, it was alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed us with the right tools to overcome such difficulties.
And I think it's recognizing those tools, right? It's like Allah doesn't give you a hardship without giving you tools. And even if the hardship doesn't come directly from Allah, because it comes from whatever, you know, life situation you find yourself in, there are tools, whether it be in terms of people around us, or, you know, in terms of I don't know, things that we have within us that God puts in us. I think that's really important to recognize. God says He doesn't test you with anything you can't handle, so you know you have the strength that He's given you within.
I mean, I look at in our community special needs. I know we have people in the community with Down syndrome, and I think my challenges are so, they're nothing compared to the challenges some of these other parents have had, no. And I can only be thankful for that. Not just the challenges, but then the tools that I've been given to cope with those challenges as well. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, you know, like I said, every step, it's a blessing.
But it must have been really difficult to actually see your child, like you're saying, go through an operation at such a young age. I mean, like 3 months is, it's, you know, they're so tiny, and you're just like, I can't even imagine what must have been going through your mind at that time when you're, you know, sitting there while she's in the operating theatre. What's going through your head? And
so the surgery was about 4 hours long. That time went in just doing amals after amals, because it was a massive surgery. The risks are quite high. But again, you know, I was in a country where I was blessed with this health service that was so much better than if I was in Tanzania, or if I had a child 20 years ago, you know. So alhamdulillah, I remember my mom saying, "Agama jetla wadare mashino chetla wadare bimari." You know, so we saw humor in stuff. We saw, you know, we always saw the positives that came out of it.
I was actually just going to say that. It's like, it's beautiful how you're seeing the positive in everything. It's like you're constantly looking at, it could have been so much more worse, and it wasn't, and alhamdulillah for that. And that's a beautiful trait to have.
How can you not? All these stories about other kids, and you see, like, you go to Dar es Salaam. I remember I had a cousin, my Masi's daughter, who was partially paralyzed, and I know, because I've seen what the struggles my Masi went through and the struggles my cousin went through, I have nothing compared to what they went through. Nothing.
So I suppose one of the learnings that we can take away from your life situation is to always look at people who have it more difficult than us, and we'd appreciate how good we actually have it.
Definitely. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
It's not to say that, I've always said, oh, I'm this highly blessed woman with no difficulties at all. I mean, there are times in my life when, for example, when there are programs at mosque and you see these beautiful girls come up and, their achievements are celebrated. And then I go to, Khadija has annual reviews every year at school. And I always come out of those annual reviews with a lump in my throat. I'm like, it's a constant reminder of what your child cannot do. So those annual reviews, you list things that the difficulties your child has so they can get the support for it. And that is one of the hardest times. I remember coming out of those meetings, and I always either call my husband crying or I have a lump in my throat. I'm like, oh, my chokri, I'm not Shakti, and she can't do this and she can't do that. And so those, I mean, it's not always easy at the time when it's happening. Maybe it's just we're too consumed in what's happening to Khadija to think about other things. And yes, you see, I'm a math teacher. My husband is an accountant. We're both good at maths, and we think, if we're such, we could have brought up a child who was an average child, maybe more, and she would have achieved so much. So there are those times when you think she could do better, or it could be better.
And that's only human. And I think I'd like to thank you for sharing that, because it just shows that, it is a roller coaster of emotions. It's like, you will go through the downs, but then it's just sort of picking yourself up and realizing that, what, I've got to look at the positives. I've got to be okay with this, because this is what God's chosen for me. And again, looking at it as a blessing rather than as a difficulty, which I think is beautiful. Okay, so do you want to continue with so what happened?
About the community and raising Khadija. I think that one of the best decisions I made was not to hide away with it. I banged every door there was to make sure that my child was included in everything. I remember madrasa I went to, and again, such beautiful people in this world. I remember going to madrasa, and I'm not going to name names, because if I mention one name, there's a whole thousands of names I'm going to have to end up mentioning. But I remember the head at the time of the special needs department, and alhamdulillah that we had a madrasa with a special needs department. And I went to this lady and I said to her, I want Khadija to be in a madrasa. And she's like, yeah, sure. She took her and she's like, bye mommy, you can go. Because I had been to other madaris where I had to sit with her and see what she was doing, and other teachers seeing what she was doing, and it didn't feel the right setting for her. But then I went to madrasa, and this lady, she just said, yeah, we'll take her on. And Khadija has learned so much from madrasa. Oh my God, the teachers she's had, the assistants she's had, like a lot of the things I haven't taught Khadija how to recite surahs at home. I haven't taught her how to pray at home. This is all happened at madrasa with her teachers. It's just amazing.
MashaAllah, that's absolutely amazing. And I think that's beautiful that we have a community, and again, appreciating the community. I think it's really, really important. Again, as with everything, there's always positives and negatives, and obviously there are negatives within the community, but again, there are so many positives, and it's recognizing those positives, especially at difficult times in our lives, like deaths and weddings and madrasas and bringing up our children and everything. It's huge. So yeah, thank you for that.
I mean, Stanmore has been really pivotal in Khadija's achievements as well. There's so many things that I want to mention, and I know we don't have much time, but for example, there was a lady I remember, but I don't see her anymore at mosque. I remember bringing Khadija in because she wasn't able to sit up for a very long time or crawl or anything. I used to bring her in her car seat with her nasal tube, and kushali hoito, you dress her up, and wafat hoito, you put. And I remember this lady, she was in a wheelchair herself, and she said to me, she came next to me and she's like, your child is like a princess. And you know, just small things like this. And then Khadija with the madrasa, and then she has the yard. She's part of the yard group. With the classes that happen upstairs, they had Khadija do her own segment as well, because she loves to talk and she loves to recite on the stage. And she's become such a madam these days. And I think Stanmore is somehow to blame for this. They've given her so much
Dad.
She's been given that space. Actually, like, she started Dua Josh Kabir, the, you know, the youth as a the youth Dua drive and the yard, and oh my God, name it. And they've really bent backwards for Khadija. But again, I think it is the parents' responsibility to knock on those doors, because not everyone has that awareness. So as a parent, I knocked on those doors. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, I was received with both hands. I remember the EC committee recently had a program, and they, like, I didn't ask them. They phoned me. And they're like, we want Khadija to open the program with the recitation of the Quran. I'm like, we have such beautiful reciters at mosque, but here I am part of this community, and this lady is calling me and wants Khadija to open the Quran recitation. I have nothing but just praise for this community, alhamdulillah.
But that only happened because, like you said, you knocked on the doors. You went out there and you sort of, you know, literally sort of said, look, I want things happening for my daughter. My daughter's special needs. I need something happening. What can you do? And also, you know, sort of suggesting things as well. I think a lot of the times parents tend to expect things from the community, for the community to read their mind, or for the community to be able to provide for everyone. And again, if you're not being provided for, I think it's up to us to go up to those who are in charge and actually say, hang on a minute, you know, I need this, or I want this, or this is, you know, how can this be made possible? And even within madrasa, you didn't just put her in madrasa, you're actually helping out in madrasa as well, right?
I was a very active person as a teenager at mosque in Dar es Salaam. So I think I hadn't actually started doing anything until after Khadija was at madrasa. So I think eventually I thought, yeah, I think it was because of Khadija. Yeah, I started with being the head of the special needs department and other things.
So again, taking on that role of being the head of the special needs, because you realize that, you know, it was something you were passionate about. It was something you had experience in because you had a child with special needs. So, you know, you could actually give something back to the community and make sure that in the meantime, your daughter was being taken care of as well, which is amazing. So it's like, it's not just her that's, you know, getting something out of it, but other children within the community who have special needs as well.
Even with work, I started TAing before I started teaching. And I remember, like, again, I say this is just a blessing. I remember as a TA, my school had asked me to do an inset because we were getting a child in secondary school with Down syndrome. And they said, well, on inset days, we usually have a special educational needs inset as well. And they said, would you mind conducting this? And I was like, no, you know, I'm the expert in this area. And I did. And first of all, I'm conducting, like, a girl from Dar es Salaam who's not qualified is conducting a inset to qualified people, 150 qualified people, about special needs. Secondly, they saw the potential in me, asked me to get qualified, and you know, I did things, and they employed me as an unqualified teacher. So again, you know, it's just everything that I have, that Khadija, that has come my way through Khadija, has just been a blessing. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. I'm going to leave it up to you to decide where you want to take this, because I know there's a lot you want to talk about. So I don't want to sort of direct you in any direction. So what would you like to talk about next?
Two things. You know, we were talking about the community. I think we have wonderful people in our community. I've had people that come to me and tell me that, you know, we've named our daughter Khadija after your Khadija. And I'm thinking, yeah, Khuda, you know, like, I'm not even your Sagi, and Khadija's not even your relative. You're naming her after her. And then I've got people who have come to me, and twice, in fact, and this is like a miracle somewhat, have come to me and said, we saw you at Ziyarat. You know, you were with us. I'm like, I had not been to Ziyarat this year. And like, no, we saw you in Khadija. I'm like, no, I wasn't. And it's like, no, we saw you. And twice people have come up to me and said, and I'm thinking, you know, and then these miraculous things that happen with me. I remember being on a train one day after one of her annual reviews, and this man somehow, I don't know where he had appeared from, must have noticed that I am upset, and he's like, sister, are you are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I didn't want to engage in a conversation when I'm in that state. And he's like, you know what, sister, you should recite Surah Juma 3 times. And I'm thinking, Koncha Manas, you know. So yeah, the beautiful people, when I have majlis at my house, Khadija loves, like, she finds out there's majlis, she goes to mosque, she's like, Ajamar majlis, please come. She sees the next one. I'm like, Khadija, we have to invite a certain number of people, you know, we can't have everyone because otherwise there's no jaga in the house. It's like, okay, mommy, I won't. And then I have people coming up to the majlis, and I'm like, oh, I didn't invite these people. And they're like, well, Khadija invited us, so we're here for her, you know. And
you do realize that Khadija is much more well known than you are. You're actually known as Khadija's mom. I knew Khadija before I knew you as Nishaat.
I say this is my identity. You know, I am Khadija's mother. I am not known as Nishaat Bhimani. I'm known as Khadija's mom. And again, beautiful people like the Stanmore Jaffries who look after the health side of things. Khadija took part, she takes part in badminton, she took part in swimming, her achievements are recognized, and she loves that attention. I remember the first time Khadija got a trophy, the participants, the whole community stood up and sang for her. I'm like, oh my God, this is from her madrasa when she graduated from madrasa. They had a graduation party for her. Yeah, her swimming. Yeah. Alhamdulillah.
Just going to show a few of her photos because, like you're saying, she's achieved so much, and a lot of that has been.
Medal she got from Stanmore Jaffries for her badminton. And again, there were people who were happy to lose a competition knowing that they'll be with Khadija, and they still went in.
Wow, that's beautiful.
These are those sad times, Asmanti, you know, those testing times when she's in the hospital, because all parts of her health, her eyes, her teeth, her nose, her ears are all affected. I think this is one of the ones that we went in for a dental surgery, and she was put down for a dental surgery.
Again, I suppose you learn from her growth, her sort of sabr, and the way that she handles it, because as she's getting older and going through these surgeries, you must get a lot of strength from her as well.
Oh, she's so brave. Oh my God, this girl does not cry, and it's not because she has Down syndrome. It's just because she's so brave, and like her favorite imam is Imam Zamana. I remember after Ayat, Khadija loves taking pictures with all. That's all right.
That's her playing badminton, mashallah. So she's achieved so much, alhamdulillah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And you've made that possible for her.
And we look after her health, because now she's putting on weight, and swimming and going to the park and getting her moving is and I've got such good people. Oh, I wanted to talk about this. She raised last Ramadan, she fasted 21 rojas.
Wow.
From it, and she did those fasts because obviously she's at home and COVID and everything, and she raised enough. I think it was just over 4.5 grand for a charity, for Al Zahra Trust. Yeah.
Mashallah, mashallah. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Oh.
Going to the procession. She loves Azada. Oh my God. She's constantly listening to Qasidas and Marshas and Matam, and she is the biggest fan there ever is of the Hashmi and the Rahmani sisters.
Wow. You've not been able to take her to Ziyarat yet, have you?
One picture I've sent where she's looking at in Kazmain. She's looking at the Zaris. Her back's to the camera.
So see, she's actually been to Ziyarat as well?
Yeah, so we went to Syria first. Yeah, looking at those two domes.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, so we went to Syria first, and when she came back again, we could see the improvement in her health, Masmanti, her speech, her health, major improvement. And then again, after Ziyarat as well, like all of these things that she's been able to achieve always happen after she visits these beautiful places.
Amazing. Was there any other specific picture you wanted to show? I'm just trying to go through them.
Because I know a lot of parents come up to me when they've been diagnosed, when their children have been diagnosed, or when they've been told. Word of it, like the advice is not make sure she takes part in and as much as child. The more stimulation you give them, the more they will achieve.
That's absolutely amazing. I think, you know, we can see how much she's done.
Oh, she makes friends every month. Like she goes to the mall, she's like, can I take a picture with you? And she takes a picture with the people. She goes and there's the charity fundraiser people there, and she's like, oh, can I take what's your name? Can I take a picture with you? And they never say no to Khadija. Like everywhere she goes on holiday or to the mall or like even shopping, anything, she'll just want to love taking pictures.
She's such an angel. She's amazing. It's like how can you say no to her? It's absolutely amazing. We're coming to the end of our segment. So is there anything you want to just mention which you haven't mentioned?
I want to first of all thank the community. I mean, we have really good people in the community, and I think we should continue maintaining that. But I also want to request the community, because I know I have a fear of what's going to happen with Khadija now, and the fear is she going to be able to work? If she is, who's going to be her employers? Is she going to be able to live independently? And there's a lot of things available in the secular area of things, but I'd like our community to be able to provide this too. And I know Inspirational Minds and Farzana, who was talking about the network of parents she has of children with special needs, was saying that as parents, we should really go for this, where we have housing and we have jobs and we have even like marriage options for people with special needs.
How do you see that going forward, and any sort of ideas of how to take that forward?
I think
because it's a beautiful thing to do. I'm just wondering, have you got any ideas to take it forward?
More importantly, I think the stage that Khadija is at the moment would be her job security and her job experience and work experience. And I've already been speaking to people who are again, alhamdulillah, are so happy to help. Again, it's not directly from the Jamaat, it is people looking for jobs in secular regions. But I just feel we should have a body, and don't tell me to head this piece, because every time I ask for this, like, yeah, you're in charge. I'm like, no, I don't want to be in charge. A body that will be able to find jobs and place these people with special needs in those jobs to start with.
Yeah, I think that would be beautiful, but it does need someone to head it. So yeah, I'm just leaving it out there. Sorry, before we finish, if I can just ask you, with everything that you've been through, and the way you look at life and the way you look at the opportunities God sent you, if you were to leave 3 pieces of advice to people, what would they be going forward in their lives?
All right. So the first one is to never lose faith. Allah loves us so much. Whenever he's granting us these things, there's always his hikmah behind this. The second of all is to not be shy to ask for help. There are people there who are willing to help. There are people there who even sickly. I know people who, like myself, did not ask for any benefits from the government because they felt guilty. Why should we be paid? But whatever help there is out there, you are entitled to it, so ask for it. And lastly, just enjoy this relationship that you have with a beautiful soul that Allah has blessed you with.
And I think that's not just with people who've got Down syndrome. I think it's in any situation. I think the people that we have in our lives, we can look at the negatives in them, and everyone has negatives in them. and be so focused on the negatives that we don't actually enjoy the people that God's given us in our lives, or we look at the positives in them and actually people in our lives, because there are some people who are all alone and don't have anyone. So I think, yeah, actually enjoy what God has given you in your life, and be thankful for it. I think that really comes across from your story, and the way that you are constantly smiling and happy, and you actually live that. It's not just words, you actually live that, and that's amazing. And I think, Khadija's got that from you as well, or you've got it from Khadija. I don't know which way around it is, but it's beautiful. It's like whenever I meet you guys at mosque, it's like you're both always smiling, and it's amazing. So yeah, thank you so much for that. We've had lots and lots of comments on how amazing you are, how amazing Khadija is, how lucky we are to have Khadija in our lives, in the community.
That's there and say, oh, you're such a good mother, oh my God, you've done such a good job with your daughter. I'm like, all mothers do that. I want the best for my child just as you do. So there isn't any option but to be the best of moms.
That's so true. It's beautiful. Someone's actually written here, we normally look at Khadija's achievements, but now we see your achievements as well, alhamdulillah. No, alhamdulillah. Like you said, I think God chooses who to give what to, and he knows what will help each one of us grow. And I think if we recognize that, and if we truly believe that, then we will grow in the situation that we find ourselves in. And instead of seeing it as a difficulty, we'll actually see it as a blessing, which is what you've said all throughout this interview. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for being so open, for sharing your life story, and for sharing Khadija with us as well. Thank you so much for that as well.
Please continue to keep.
Of course, you're always in our du'as, inshallah. We'll keep each other in our du'as, inshallah. Inshallah, next week I have a special guest from East Africa, whose name is Sarah, and she will be talking about what she has achieved in the Jamaat there, and it's Sarah Ghulam Hussain, and she actually talks about how, again, I think a lot to do with the way you've been in, like, you have to keep knocking at doors, and if you're passionate about something, you will get it done. It's just a matter of constantly pushing and showing that you want this. And I think that's really, really important. It's not to give up at the first sort of hurdle. And then if, like God says, you take one step towards him and he takes 10 steps towards you. So it's literally sort of knowing that and pushing yourself forward. So it's a huge, it'll be a very good motivational speech, I think, from Sarah, inshallah. And it's been from you as well. So thank you very, very much, Nishaat. And thank you for all of you joining us today. And inshallah, we will see you all again next Sunday, inshallah. Thank you. We can finish with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajah.